Welcome to Power to Unite with Elvira. Isa na naman po, napaka-exciting episode ang matutunghayan ninyo dahil ang grupo andito ngayon sa Singapore at makakasama natin ngayon walang iba kundi si Msgr. Philip Heng. Siya po ang Vicar General ng Archdiocese of Singapore at the same time Parish Priest po ng Church of St. Ignatius. The Catholic Church of St. Ignatius started in 1961 with 2 Sunday Masses weekly. Today, it serves about 4,200 Catholics attending 7 Masses every weekend. With the expatriate and Filipino communities increasing significantly in recent years. This growth could be attributed to the guidance of the Holy Spirit and the faithful devotion of Msgr. Philip Heng, who strived to uphold the parish goal of finding God in myself, others, and all situations for God's greater glory. At magbabalik po ang Power to Unite with Elvira.
May maganda daw po kayong balita.
May biyayang darating sa atin. Hinirang ang ating bayan, pinili ang bansang Pilipinas upang dito idaos ang 51st International Eucharistic Congress.
Dadayuhin ng mga Katoliko sa buong mundo. Magkita-kita tayo sa Cebu sa January 2016.
Sa selebrasyon na ito, maghahari ang pagmamahal sa isa't isa dahil tayo ay pamilya ng Diyos at Siya ang ating Ama.
Saksihan natin ang real presence ni Jesus sa Eucharist. Yan ang misa ng mundo.
Pinakamalaking pagsasama ng mga mananampalataya. Pagtulong-tulungan natin para may sakatuparan.
Mula sa ating munting kakayahan, may handog natin ang pinakamalaking selebrasyon ng banal na Eucharistia.
Sa kapangyarihan ng mamamayang Pilipino, kaya natin ito.
Isang pamilya sa ilalim ng isang Diyos. Nag-iisang bangka tayo sa isang pananampalataya. Christ in you, the hope of glory.
Msgr. Philip, we were very glad that you obliged to be interviewed knowing how busy you are. And I found out that you're just celebrating the Feast of St. Ignatius. So for the past 2 days, 3 days, I think until in a few days' time, you're going to have a big celebration, right? With this Ignatian way of life and, and being a Jesuit, because I'm very curious. And I found out from Father Kilong, that he is now the president of Ateneo School of Theology, that you studied there in Manila.
Yes, I studied both my philosophy and theology at Loyola School in the 1980s. I was even there participating in the EDSA revolution, together with all the Filipinos, marching the streets. And for us, it was a time of standing up for justice and the rights of the people. So even though we were foreign students there, we felt we had to support the revolution because it was the rights, the just rights of the poor and the needy. So I'm very happy to have been there for 8.5 years for my philosophy and theology formation, and I found it to be a very enriching time throughout my studies there. And it was truly providential that I did both my philosophy and theology.
But Msgr. Philip, because I know you're a Chinese Malaysian, and normally when you say Chinese Malaysian, they either adhere to being a Taoism or Buddhism, So how come you choose to be a Catholic and then you enter this priesthood? Who influenced you to become a priest, and why join the Jesuit?
Okay, first, both my grandparents, my maternal and paternal grandparents, who migrated from mainland China to Malaysia, they were already baptized Catholics.
Okay.
So my parents were all baptized Catholics, and we grew up as baptized Catholics. And when in the late 1970s, I went to study accountancy in London.
Okay.
And the chaplain to the overseas students there was a Jesuit priest, Father Hugh Thwaites. And he was a very good priest, a very good model for me of what a good priest is and how he reached out to the many poor people in southwest London. And being a member of the Legion of Mary of his chaplaincy, I found that, you know, to reach out to the poor and to be able to bring God to people who are in need, especially the blacks in southwest London. And looking at the life of Father Hugh Thwaites, he inspired me a lot. And as I felt somehow God was using me to reach out to people in need of various nationalities, the attraction continued. I never ruled out the priesthood or religious life, but the attraction continued to develop through the inspiring witness of this Jesuit priest.
Okay.
And when I finished my studies, I originally had intended to join the diocesan priest. I had applied to be a diocesan priest in Kuala Lumpur.
Okay.
I was accepted.
Yes.
And to make a long story short, during the interview, I was suddenly moved to ask the Archbishop who interviewed me, Archbishop Bendagan, that I somehow felt that God had, in His will, had founded different religious orders for a specific purpose.
Yes.
And I told the bishop immediately that, you know, I felt I'm called to the priesthood, but I'm not sure about religious life because I've not really gone around seeking more information about religious life. And he was a very good bishop. And he said, actually, the second interview I had was with another bishop, Bishop Anthony Selvanayagam. He said, in the church, there's no competition. The leg is not better than the arm.
Okay.
So please feel free to continue your discernment with other different religious congregations. So, to make a long story short, eventually, I found the Jesuit religious order as to be, whose charism to me appealed to me most of all. Because for the Jesuit, for God's greater glory, we are called to be available to serve any person, any time, and any place. That sense of great availability to the needs of the world and the church truly attracted me. Because when I wanted to be a priest and I felt called to give my life for God, I felt that I want to be totally available. So the Jesuit spirituality attracted me very much. So then I started applying to join the Jesuit in Malaysia.
So how come you were assigned in Singapore and not in Kuala Lumpur?
When I finished my studies, my superior sent me to do the final stage of formation, which is tertianship in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. And I completed that. He had already in mind that he wanted me to be the novice director. So as soon as I finished my final stage of formation in a tertianship in Northern Ireland, I stayed back in Dublin for about 7 months or so to take up some studies in spirituality. And I was immediately sent back here to Singapore in June 1996 to be the novice director. And I was a novice director for 12 and a half years, forming many novices in the Asia-Pacific region, especially East Timor. And throughout the 12 and a half years, I had 66 novices. And it was because there's a need for a novice director that the superiors asked me to come to Singapore.
They were from East Timor coming here to
Yes.
Singapore to study.
Yeah.
So it must be very enriching for you, you know, as a novice director. So what did you see, the challenges that you faced during that time? Because, you know, East Timor just become independent a few years ago,
Yes.
isn't it? So what did you see in them? That do you see there is so much hope that the Catholic faith, you know, has developed so much because of what they learned from the Jesuit charism? Does it help them to survive all the trials, you know?
During the novitiate?
Yes.
I realized that the East Timorese novices, when they came here to the novitiate, had a background of a lot of pain and suffering through the violence that they went through.
Yes.
So as they had great desire to want to be good Jesuits, I had to help them appreciate that the calling is real, but at the same time they have to work through all the emotional traumas and pain that they had, experienced many years, for many years. So that was a big challenge for me. But having said that, the East Timorese are still Asian compared to the other Asian novices I had from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Thailand, from Cambodia. We are all Asian.
Yes.
In many ways, there's a lot of similarities in Asian culture, even though the countries are different. So based on that, I felt that I was able to somehow understand them because they were Asian. If I had a Western novice, it would have been very difficult for me to understand.
So you can say that the East Timor, the novices, maybe some of them are already priests, develop more and learn more from the Singapore side rather than from the Philippines, because they could come to the Philippines, considering Philippines is really 70% Catholic. So I'm just curious, how come they all agree to come here in Singapore instead of the Philippines?
Well, I suppose first it was the decision of the superiors who felt that, who knew me in person, that I was suitable to be their novice master. Perhaps that's one main reason. Secondly, although Singapore is a first world country, and you would imagine that a third world country like East Timor would find it difficult to adjust to a first world country. However, I felt that was not a big problem for their formation, because the novitiate setup was very simple. It was very simple, it was Spartan, and they had the additional benefit of living in a simple setup, even though we were in first world countries. And in the Jesuit novitiate, we have formation called experiment. And during the experiment, they had to work as garbage collectors, migrant workers, and all kinds of different challenges that they too faced. So even though we are in Singapore, there are enough of challenges to help a novice grow and have a good formation. Yeah.
That's really very interesting, but magbabalik po ang Power to Unite with Elvira.